You haven't cleaned your room in a while, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a low-grade hum has been running for days, maybe weeks. That hum has a source, and it's sitting on your desk, piled in your closet, shoved into the corner you stopped looking at. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why physical clutter creates mental paralysis and why the fix is more mechanical than you think. Start with something you felt but probably never named. You walk into a messy room after a long day and your shoulders tighten. Half an inch, maybe less. You don't register it consciously, but your brain just ran a background scan of every object in your visual field and quietly added each one to an open loop. That coffee mug from Tuesday, the pile of mail, the jacket draped over the chair instead of hung up. Each item is a micro decision your brain logged and deferred. And deferred decisions have a cost. Researchers at Princeton's Neuroscience Institute put participants in two environments and measured their ability to focus. One space was tidy. The other was cluttered. In the cluttered room, task performance dropped and stress markers climbed. The visual noise was competing for the same attentional resources the participants needed for the actual task. Your brain doesn't distinguish between important input and random shoe on the floor. It processes all of it. Every object costs a sliver of bandwidth. Now multiply that across an entire apartment. You wake up. The kitchen counter has dishes from 2 days ago. The bathroom shelf is crowded with products you haven't touched in months. Your desk has 3 layers of paper archaeology. Before you've made a single meaningful decision, your brain has already burned through dozens of micro-assessments. Each one whispers the same thing. Something here needs doing. And each one you ignore creates a tiny residue of guilt. That residue accumulates. By noon you feel exhausted without having accomplished anything, and you can't figure out why. This is where the concept of stagnant energy actually has teeth. Strip away the mysticism, and what you're left with is a feedback loop. Clutter signals incompletion. Incompletion generates low-level stress. Stress reduces your capacity to act. Reduced capacity leads to more clutter. The room gets worse. You get more tired. The loop tightens, and your body keeps the score in ways you'd never suspect. A study from UCLA's Center on Everyday Lives tracked 32 families and measured their cortisol patterns relative to the state of their homes. The families who described their spaces as cluttered showed flatter cortisol slopes throughout the day. That's the biological signature of chronic stress. Their bodies were running a low-grade alarm from morning to night, and the trigger was the state of the kitchen counter. The women in the study were disproportionately affected, partly because of gendered expectations around housework. But the physiological mechanism hit everyone. A messy home kept the body's stress response simmering at a level just below conscious awareness. So the clutter is doing something real, something measurable. But the mechanism goes deeper than stress hormones. Every object you own carries an associational weight. The guitar you bought when you were going to learn. The exercise equipment gathering dust. The half-finished project sitting in the corner. These are frozen intentions. Each one represents a version of yourself that started something and stopped. And every time your eyes pass over them, your brain briefly reactivates that unfinished narrative. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Incomplete tasks occupy more mental space than completed ones. Your room is full of open tabs, dozens of them, running in the background, draining processing power you could be using for something that matters right now. This is why cleaning feels like more than cleaning. When you throw out the guitar you're never going to learn, you're closing a tab. When you finally sort the mail pile, you're resolving a decision loop that's been cycling for weeks. Each item you deal with releases a small amount of cognitive bandwidth back to you, and the cumulative effect can be dramatic. There's a specific way this plays out that most people miss entirely. Your physical environment functions as an external representation of your mental state, but the relationship runs in both directions. A messy room reflects a scattered mind. A scattered mind produces a messy room. Obvious enough, the less obvious part, intervening on either side of the equation, affects the other. You can't always control your mental state directly. You've tried. Telling yourself to focus harder while sitting in chaos is like trying to meditate next to a fire alarm. But you can control the room, you can pick up the clothes, you can clear the desk, and when you do, something shifts that willpower. alone couldn't touch. Behavioral scientists describe this as an environmental affordance shift. Your surroundings constantly suggest behaviors. A clear desk affords focused work. A cluttered desk affords a sense of order that bleeds into the next decision you make. Charles Duhigg documented how making your bed in the morning correlates with higher productivity throughout the entire day. The bed itself is trivial. The signal it sends to your brain is the payload. This is a person who completes things. That identity cue ripples outward. Think about the last time you deep cleaned your space. Remember the feeling afterward? That lightness. The sudden urge to do something productive. People describe it as a rush of motivation, but the mechanics are simpler. You removed the drag. Your brain was running at 60% capacity under the weight of all those open loops, and you just closed most of them in an afternoon. The motivation was always there. It was buried under laundry. Now here's where the energy framing actually earns its keep, even for skeptics. Traditional frameworks, whether feng shui or various contemplative traditions, describe cluttered spaces as having stuck energy. Modern psychology would frame the same prescription. The spatial arrangement of your environment affects your cognitive fluency, your emotional baseline, and your behavioral momentum. Call it qi. Call it cognitive load management. The intervention is identical. Move the stuck things, clear the pathways, let something flow that was blocked. And the flow isn't just metaphorical. Research on environmental psychology shows that people in organized spaces make faster decisions, report higher satisfaction, and even eat better. One study found that people in a tidy kitchen chose an apple over a cookie far more often than people in a messy kitchen. Same people, same options. The environment tipped the scale. Your willpower is leaky. Your surroundings are the container. So why do we resist cleaning when we know all of this? Because the clutter is comfortable. Each object represents a deferred decision, and deferral feels easier than resolution. Throwing something away means admitting you're never going to use it. Organizing a space means confronting how disorganized your systems actually are. The mess is a buffer against self-confrontation. It lets you stay vague about your priorities when everything's in a pile. Nothing demands to be ranked. Cleaning forces ranking. This matters. This goes, this stays, but moves. Every decision is a tiny act of self-definition, and that's exactly why it feels so heavy when you start and so light when you finish. You just spent 3 hours making micro-declarations about who you are and what you value. Your brain registered every single one. There's a practical architecture to this that separates a temporary tidy-up from a lasting shift. The temporary version shoves things into drawers and calls it done. The lasting version asks a harder question about each object. Does this belong in the life I'm building, or the life I'm leaving? That question turns cleaning into editing. And editing your space is editing your identity. One room at a time, one surface at a time. The people who try to overhaul everything in a weekend burn out by Sunday and the mess returns within 2 weeks. The ones who pick a single drawer and fully complete it, every item decided, nothing deferred, build momentum that compounds. Completion breeds completion. Your brain notices the finished drawer every time you open it, and that tiny signal of competence funds the next round. The ancient practices had a phrase for what happens when you clear a stagnant space. They said you were making room for what wants to come. The modern translation is just as precise. You're freeing up cognitive and emotional bandwidth that was trapped in maintenance mode. New ideas require open processing capacity. New habits require environmental support. New energy requires the old energy to move. Your room is a to-do list you wrote with objects instead of words. Every item on it pulls a thread of your attention, all day, whether you notice or not. The hum you've been hearing for weeks has an off switch. It's in the closet you've been avoiding.